All right, welcome back, everyone. Mr. Elsinger here, and so far, just kind of getting you caught up. So far, this is where you should be. What you should have done so far is you've do the reading guide for section 1. You should have done the PowerPoint if you watched that video to help you out a little bit, to learn a little bit more about section 1. That would have been a great resource to go to. I go into a little bit more depth and explain some stuff. And then also, after that, section 2, what you were supposed to do so far is there's just a little activity. I didn't have a reading guide or nothing like that. I just wanted to make you aware of the different types of psychology. So like the different fields that you could possibly go in when we're looking at psychology, which is kind of cool. So if you did that activity, this is where you should be now. Remember, don't ever work ahead. Don't start with section 4 and then go back to section 1. That just doesn't make sense for learning wise. So remember, anytime if you have a question after, say you're watching this, pause it, send me an email. I can try to get to you. But and then at this point, you should also have your reading guide section 3 done. Like I would have that done. The only thing, if you didn't do something, the only thing that you shouldn't have done at this part possibly would be the essential question and the compelling question at the end, because you want to wait maybe for a little bit more in depth with that. This one I'm hoping to be a little faster than the last one, so I'm going to stop talking and go forward for you, okay? So first off, what is the section that we're talking about? We're talking about the history of psychology. So I'm not going to go into like great depth. Why? Because some of these people we're going to talk about Sigmund Freud later on. We're going to talk about John B. Watson later on. We're going to talk about B.F. Skinner later on. All right, these are all people that we will get into. So I'll tell you about their theories, and I'll tell you about what they came up with, and that's about it. And you can just kind of learn a little bit about these people. So what's our main objective? This is a question that we want to look at. How has psychological theories and practices changed over time? So you're going to hear many different people. I remember when I was in college learning psychology, it was all learning all the different theories that every single person had, which is crazy. So we're going to talk about 5 or 6 people now. That way you have a little heads up when we talk about them later. All right. So let's start from the beginning. Where does psychology come from? You had to do this in your first assignment. And remember, I told you had to do the I am statements. You might remember that. Okay, that actually came from a guy named Socrates. Okay, Socrates came up with, he believed that we can learn about ourselves by examining our thoughts and feelings and who we are. And he always said, like, before you can study someone else, you have to know thyself, okay? And that's called introspective. So when you did this, the I am statements, understanding who you are, your thoughts about things, your feeling about things, things you like, you dislike, you hate, things that may give you anxiety, things that make you excited, whatever, okay? You were doing introspection. You were looking within, like, who are you? And before we can study others, you should know yourself. So Socrates was a philosopher, but then his roots, the roots of philosophy kind of come into psychology, okay? Another person that's very important back in the day was Plato. Plato came up with associatism, okay? And what this means is that we learn to connect. We learn to connect things, all right, between two ideas and events, all right? We see that we know how experiences often remind us of certain similar experiences in the past, and how we face of a loved one maybe makes us feel secure, and maybe those thoughts, later ideas of dream can turn into a daydream. So like things connect, so you're finding a connection. So like the face of someone makes you feel loved and happy, okay? So like when I see my son, that's associative. 2 different ideas or 2 different things. See my son, it gives me that feeling of love and just excitement. So yeah, so that was Plato. Now, back in the day when we're looking at Middle Ages and what they thought about psychology, when we're talking about it like abnormal psychology or psychological disorders, a lot of time back in the day what they thought was like there was a problem with you, right? They didn't think, the problem they thought was like you're literally possessed by demons, okay? So back in the day, Europeans believed that problems were just because you were sinned, you did something wrong, and God was against you at that point, and you were being possessed by demons, okay? So that was kind of, psychology of course has grown since then, but that was the Middle Ages. That was the idea, that famous water flow test to see if you're possessed or not. I mean, all these different things that kind of came out of that. But of course, we've grown from that and what psychology has become. Now, psychology has developed over the time, so it's advanced even from, I mean, the 1800s, 1900s really advances, and that's when it really takes off. So the first main date that I would like you to know is 1879. Why do you have to know that? This is seen as like the year where we think psychology begins, okay? This is where they say is the true beginning of the study of psychology. Now, what happened in 1879? It was actually the first laboratory was created by who is seen as one of the first original psychologists is Wilhelm Wundt, okay? Wilhelm Wundt, he come up with the very first laboratory, and I'll kind of talk to you about what he did and what his beliefs were with psychology. He had the first one. It was actually called structuralism, and we'll kind of learn it right here. All right. So Wilhelm Wundt, he came up with structuralism, and what this is the idea that we are looking at concerned with the basic elements of our consciousness. Okay. So structuralism are looking for for example, a person can experience an apple objectively by observing its shape, its color, texture, and taste, but then they can also think about it subjectively in remembering how good it feels for a bite or to take a bite out of an apple. So that'd be an example of what objective and subjective is. So objective is a sight and taste of it, but then the subjective part is our emotional response. So he's saying that there's objects out there in the world that gives us an emotional response. I mean, in our daily lives, for you maybe school, it might give you an emotional response. If you see the school, maybe it makes you nauseous. I don't know. Maybe it makes you sick. Whatever it is, okay? So an objective might be a sight, a taste, something you see, and then it gives you, of course, that emotional response in those mental images, something that comes out of that. So that was structuralism, all right? He believed that there had to be two. You have sensations and then feelings about those sensations. Another famous, I'm going through the famous one. I got about 4 to go through, but William James, he was a functionalism, okay? And they were concerned with the idea, sorry, my phone's ringing, and I'm going to have to not answer that because Hateful wants it. But what we're going to be looking at, functionalism, they believed in the mental processes helped organisms adapt to our environment. So emphasis on the purpose of behavior and mental processes is what they're doing. So how do we adapt to our lives to be successful? So for example, how do you adapt in school when there's a tough class? I'm just going to ask you that question. Say you're in a really tough class. How are you going to adapt to be successful? I guarantee you're thinking in your mind, I'm going to study. I'm going to read. I'm going to study. I'm going to do the extra work. Exactly, okay? We as human beings, he felt like we are trying to adapt and we are trying to succeed. And we would do what it takes to succeed. And if there's times where we're doing something and we don't see success out of that, then we might stop that. It won't become a habit. So he says things might become a habit. So think about maybe I'm getting at the age where I'm starting to put on a couple pounds, for example, okay? So my behavior patterns, I maybe start working out to try to lose weight. Well, if I'm working out and I don't see a change in myself, this is when a lot of people stop doing that, right? Because they don't see it being successful, so it doesn't become a habit. All right, so that's why you got to find the right workout that you can see success, so that way it becomes a habit and something you always want to do. So that's functionalism, okay? So how do we adapt to our behavior and patterns to maintain it and to be successful, okay? So that was William James. Some other ones that we got here, John B. Watson, okay? John B. Watson, he talks about behaviorism. And what is behaviorism? Behaviorism is the idea where we're looking at the scientific study of observable behavior. Okay, so we learn from seeing things. Okay, so you might have heard all the time people say playing video games, playing Grand Theft Auto and playing these horrible games can create something inside of you, create violent behavior inside of you because you've seen it happen on that. Okay, so that's an idea where watching someone violent might become violent. Seeing a parent act a certain way might allow you to act a certain way, okay, or a friend or something like that. Okay, so John B. Watson, at the end of the day, he believed also that people have three basic emotional reactions towards anything, okay? And he thought those were fear, rage, and love, okay? So he was big into thinking that we observe, so behaviorism, we behave a certain way because of what we observe and what we see in our daily lives. So what is the norm? Maybe that's how we're going to behave, okay? B.F. Skinner, okay? B.F. Skinner, he believed animals and humans. Oh my gosh, Mr. Hayfield. All right, can you go tell him not to call me? Thank you. Anyway, believed animals and humans learn to behave in certain ways so that way they could get reinforced by it. So think about it. Why do you study? You study to get good grades. That's a reinforcement. Why do you do your chores? To get money. Okay, why do you go to your job and show up on time and do what your boss tells you? To get money. Those are all reinforces that we get. Okay, and what his was called, what B.F. Skinner idea was just reinforcements, okay? So reinforcements are going to shape our behavior, okay? Getting yelled at, that's bad. I mean, you get yelled at, so it might change your behavior because that's not a positive reinforcement. That is a negative, okay? That's a negative reinforcement that might have happened. Getting your phone taken away, negative. Okay, it's still a reinforcement. There's positive and negative reinforcements, but it's going to try to shape your behavior. And he believed that we could shape people's behaviors by doing that, okay? So that was B.F. Skinner. All right, the last guy I want to talk about is maybe the most well-known individual when we're talking about psychology, okay? And this is Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, okay, he's got some crazy ideas. They say most of his ideas when he came up with them, he was actually on cocaine, and that's proven. So some of his ideas are really crazy, and he thought with the idea of, when you're younger, you're actually sexually in love with the other gender than yourself parent. So for example, I would have been sexually attracted to my mom when I was a child. That was a belief he had. Okay, that was a belief he had with the development of children. But we'll talk about some of Sigmund Freud's ideas. So Sigmund Freud believed in psychoanalysis, okay? And you're going to hear this again. So he focused on the importance of your unconscious motives in your internal conflict with your behavior. So you have certain things inside of you, meaning your unconscious motives might be you have rage that you just throw back, and then sooner or later those unconscious rage might come out at some time, okay? So he believed in the idea of our unconscious mind is what really determines our human behavior, okay? So for example, he believed in something called the Freudian Slips. So as we're talking, I say the wrong word. All right, there's videos that you might be able to see. Look up a Freudian slip. You're going to watch videos of politicians saying words in speeches they shouldn't say, and it's like, oh, that's really what they're thinking about, and that's what their motive is in life, okay? Dreams. He believed in dreams, that we can look at our dreams, and it can say something about it. So you wake up in the morning, you write down your dreams. You can look up what that means, and it can tell you a little bit about yourself and what really is giving you anxiety or whatever in life. Okay. Some other things that Freud kind of came up with was he came up with the idea of what you think of with psychologists, helping someone out, someone laying on a table, and he just sits there and listens to them. Okay. He listens to them and listens to what they have to say and just lets them talk. And the more they talk, things might actually come out. Okay. He believed this unconscious process. So things like aggressive urges, sexual urges, all these different things are what really people are care about. That's their true motive, okay? So he believes that he thought those are more important than the conscious experience in people's behaviors and feelings, okay? He really thought that was what was going on, okay? Freudian Slips. So Freudian Slip, he came up with that. It's pretty much an error in your speech, memory, your action, whatever, that he thinks was caused by the unconscious mind. So the unconscious mind just is a little slip and you say something that you shouldn't have said. And I don't mean a big phrase or anything like that. I mean a small little word. Look it up. I'm just telling you, look it up on YouTube and you might see some Freudian Slips. See some there, okay? Yeah, so that's pretty much section 3. And I went through it kind of fast. Still not that fast, still 14 minutes. But I wanted to get through that for you guys. If you have any questions, please send me an email. We will learn more about these people later on. But awesome. See ya. Thanks. Have a good one.